All right, Miss Aurorah is back. Secured entrepreneurs. Miss Aurorah is literally out here in these streets. Okay. In this video, Miss Aurorah wants to show you a clip of this gentleman stating that over $72 trillion worth of assets are set to be handed down to Generation X, Millennials, and Generation Z. Here is the question. Secured entrepreneurs, will you be a receiver of some of the said $72 trillion worth of assets, or will you be a giver? Aha. See, the secured entrepreneurs know how this thing goes, right? So have you ever had a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a niece, a nephew, okay, anybody to transition and leave you something of value? Something that you could then invest, all right, and either start a business, buy an income producing asset, maybe buy a home, maybe buy an automobile. Have you been the receiver of any type of valuable asset due to an adult, someone who was financially astute or astute enough to create either a trust or some type of fund for their heirs or extended family members to receive something? Have you been on the receiving end of something like this? I want you to hear what this gentleman is saying and let Miss Aurorah know, comment below, if any of this is ringing true in your personal life. Can we do it? All right. So for those of you who do not know who I am Miss Aurorah Dey. And I've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs just like you build 6- and 7-figure tax-free businesses. You heard that right. Stick around because we know that this is the Secured Entrepreneur Movement.
The great wealth transfer is underway. So in case you're wondering, that's more than $70 trillion in assets set aside to be handed down to younger generations in the next 20 years. To discuss best practices for inheriting transferred wealth, we have Rich Compson, Fidelity Investments Head of Wealth Solutions. So Rich, let's start here. The great wealth transfer sometimes seems like something very far away. What does it mean for people today?
Well, some people think it's only the rich that have this wealth transfer, but what we actually see is everybody ends up passing on some kind of wealth in some kind of form. You know, it could be a savings account, a retirement account, a home, or just stuff. I mean, if you think about the stuff that you accumulate in life, a lot of it is just like, what do you want to do with your stuff over time?
Now, I want you to pay attention. He says everybody leaves something of value. He's saying everybody is going to leave some type of wealth to somebody.
So it's really about everyone, and you know, the Federal Reserve would say the average is about $50,000, but this is something that we all need to face at some point in time.
So as people are trying to collect everything together from, as you mentioned, whether it's home or assets you have around the house, what should everybody, regardless of their asset level, be doing right now to start planning for this great wealth transfer?
I think part of it first starts with, how do you want to live your life? What's important to you? Like if you're in retirement, how much do you want to live in retirement? How much do you want to save for your next generation? So it starts with a plan for you. And what does it mean to you and your overall goals? Then you can use that to say, well, how do I set a financial plan around that? And financial planning sounds daunting, but it's really about what do you have to spend? How are you going to spend against it? And what will you might have left over? And then probably the most important thing is to start to have a family conversation. What do you aspire to have done with your wealth? And for the people that are inheriting their wealth, what do they want? What are they looking for?
And so then in terms of the actual vehicles of when we say a financial plan, what should that involve so that people can even figure out how to pass down wealth?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes financial plan, again, sounds daunting. And to me, it's just like, what's the plan for your stuff? You know, you accumulate assets over time. And really what you're trying to understand is you have those assets, and then you're going to spend those assets over time. And that becomes your budget. And what are you spending against that? So if you start with just capturing an inventory of your assets and the things that you have, including your home and your personal effects, and then look at your budget. What are you going to spend? And that'll help you understand what's going to be left over. And then you can really use that to say, well, what am I going to leave behind and how will that impact my children or my broader family?
So then for people who are wondering, do I need to do something differently when I'm trying to, say, establish things regarding real estate versus, other objects or perhaps services or things, businesses that they want to pass along?
Yeah, I mean, wealth transfer has a range of complexity that you can address. Some very simple things are for financial accounts. How do you have a beneficiary in place on your accounts, and how do you want the assets to pass? I mean, that's the most simple form. For a home, you really want to say, what is the conversation you want to have around the home? Who do you want the home to? Do the people want to have the home on the other side? And there, having a will and an effect is helpful. For more complex cases, you might need a trust. If you have passing on wealth to people that may not be able to handle and manage that money, how does that trust affect? I think, just a small example of my family, my grandparents grew up on a farm. They built that farm up over many years. They lived through the Depression, they saved money on the side, but for the big question for them was, well, what do I want to have happen to the farm, and what did it mean to them? And they wanted to retain a farm, and they talked to the children about, and my uncles and my mom, to say, what do you want to do? And they had different interests, so having that conversation amongst the family was important to figure out what the plan forward is going to be.
And you raise a good point, because a lot of people aren't having conversations about money in the first place, let alone what they want to happen to it afterwards. So people on the giving and the receiving end of these transfers, what's important for them to keep in mind?
Yeah, I think the first thing is no time is better than now. Get started, because you just don't know what the future is going to lay. I mean, we see a lot of cases where people have surprise events in their lives that are unfortunate events. They may pass earlier than expected, or they may become disabled or in some form or another. How do you start those conversations early? And I just think about me growing up, like we didn't have a lot of conversations as a family around money and the wealth. And the more you can do starting right out, like for me, I have two kids in their 20s. How do I get them started? How do we start those conversations earlier? So when you get to the more complex topics later in life, they're more prepared.
And what are the biggest mistakes that you see people making in either giving their wealth or receiving it? I know we were talking about taxes earlier.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is just, what is your family intent? Like, what do you want to see? Because I think people, my dad, by the way, was an estate planner, and that's like a way to affect the plan, but it doesn't really get to what your wants and needs and your aspirations for your family. So I'd like people to start there.
Now, you heard him say that his father was a financial planner, an estate planner, right? You said something like that. But when they were growing up, they did not discuss money. They did not discuss how this thing was going to go on. Now, we cannot do that here in the Secured Entrepreneur Movement. We already know that it is a struggle to even have discussions like this with people who are not trying to have the discussion with you. All right. However, we know that we are legacy builders, and it is our duty to create these robust legacies so that our children's children can not only educate themselves, they can inform themselves, they can come out here and create things that are better for this world. Okay. We are raising the next moguls who will come out here and do the right things, and so they can be etched in the stones of time. Okay, that's what I want to say. They're going to be etched in the stones of time. We can name many people that we are still talking about today. We weren't even alive when they did what they did. Okay,
and think about what they want. And then from a tax perspective, different assets that you have are taxed in different ways. You have homes that are taxed a certain way. Retirement accounts tend to be taxed as income afterwards. Some assets get stepped up in basis and they don't have taxes till later on. If you have a significant amount of wealth, you have to think about estate taxes that might come into play. So the best thing you can do is really start with that inventory, and then start with, who do you want to give it to? Because depending on how you give the money could also have tax implications.
So know your inventory and have those conversations. As difficult as you may find them, it certainly serves everyone in the end. Appreciate you taking the time. Rich Compson, Fidelity Investments, Head of Wealth Solutions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rochelle.
We are securing a spot in time for our children's children to come on this planet and do phenomenal things. And we know that they're going to need resources. So we are holding ourselves responsible for supplying these resources. And how are we doing that? We are creating the wealth cycles that create money, keep money safe, and allow our heirs to live the type of lifestyles that they desire. Now, we won't be here to see any of it. We won't be here to see any of it. But what do we know? We know that this thing is happening. We know that it is happening, and we know that it is happening because we've set things in place. So all Miss Aurorah wants to tell the visiting entrepreneurs that the next Sole Proprietor to CEO group session is September the 26th, 4 p.m. Pacific time. All right. I look forward to seeing you all there. Go down in the links below, bit.ly, SP to CEO group, and sign up. I want to also let you know that the member videos for the channel will be up soon. I look forward to everyone who's going to join the membership here so that we can have weekly discussions about these things and how it is you are setting your legacies up. All right. So you all know you can find me, Miss Aurorah Dey, at AurorahDayConsulting.com. And until next time, ta-ta.